Hey everybody, welcome to the next installment of the Club XP podcast. It's me, Josh, as host, with Evan as the co-host. Today we're going to be talking about a film that we both found super impactful in our day-to-day lives, and that's the recent Joker film that came out. We're going to dive into where we think we stand as a society, how we can push or save somebody from walking off that ledge that the Joker walks in this film. We're going to get really into the politics of the film and what it was trying to teach us, as much as as society and what we can do to better ourselves. It's going to be a super interesting podcast, so stay tuned and we'll dive right into that to level up this conversation. To this week's show of Club XP. Today it's going to be myself, Josh, and co-host Evan.
How's it going, guys?
How's it going, Evan?
Good.
So today we're going to do a little talk about the recent movie that came out, Joker. So this is one of the first standalone Joker films that we get to see more of the background. Evan's going to give us a little synopsis of the film, and then from there we'll dive into our review and our analysis of it.
Yeah, so when it came out the first week of October, I'm glad that I know it's a few weeks later, but it's still out in the theaters. I'm glad that we get to keep the conversation going because I think people are still talking about it. If you think if you think about all the things that you've heard about the film, whether you've seen it or not, it's a very impactful film, and I think people are going to look back at it. People are going to keep watching it, and it's going to be on people's list of favorites. I don't know. That's just my assumption, but we'll get into it. But the synopsis of the film is basically, and a lot of people, I think, are either ill-informed or they just have a different perception of what the actual film's about. But it all focuses on a wannabe stand-up comedian, Arthur Fleck, who he's mistreated, he's bullied, he's struggling with mental issues. He's having issues in his private and personal life. And he pretty much checks the box on every single problem that a guy can have in his life. Pretty much every single box is checked. So really, the film just looks at his life. And it's really... I had someone at work the other day say, oh, yeah, it's about how Joker and how he went crazy. And I'm like... spoiler alert, he's already crazy. It's more or less it's his transformation into a crazy person, I guess, from a crazy person to Joker, right?
Yeah, it's more so a transformation from a crazy person to a crazy person willing to act on what he's feeling inside.
Exactly. Or not feeling.
Or yeah, exactly. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about too. To me, one of the scariest lines of the film. Actually, you know what? I think we'll start there. But for everybody listening, hey, this is spoiler alert. We're going to be getting pretty heavy into the film itself.
Turn it off.
Yeah. So turn it off, or like I've said in the past, if you want it spoiled, so you can go into the movie with some ideas that other people have already thought about. That's cool too. But if not, turn it off and come back later. But okay, so going back to what you were talking about just then about a crazy person that begins to act on what he's feeling or not feeling. So there's something inherent in this film that's kind of neat, and it takes what I would refer to, I guess, as nihilism, this hopelessness.
Yep.
It takes nihilism to its next logical conclusion. And so I think we live in kind of an interesting time where, and I kind of look at the film in a religious aspect because of my background, but you see what happens when there's no belief in anything. There's a scary line at the very end of the film, and when I heard it really kind of shook me to my core, I'll be honest with you, because the Joker, if you've seen the film, he ends up being on, well, Arthur Fleck. He ends up being on this late night show that he's always wanted to be on, as a comedian. But he starts going on a tirade, really against society itself for turning its back on him. And the host of the late night show, he's starting to notice that there's all these civil unrest in the street, and it's all kind of Joker inspired.
Yeah.
And so the host, he asked Arthur, he goes, "Hey, what's with all this? Why are you doing this? Is it some type of political statement you want to start? Some type of movement you want to begin?" And the Joker kind of looks at him in this really creepy way, and he says, "I don't believe in anything."
Yeah.
And to me, that kind of shook me, because right after he said, "I don't believe in anything," he starts kind of comparing life to comedy, because he wants to be a comedian. And he's like, comedy is subjective. Like, what's funny to somebody is going to be funny, may not be funny to somebody else.
Yeah.
And he basically says, "Hey, and this is funny to me," and then he pulls out a gun and shoots the guy right there on the stage.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, can I
and
just on that note too,
yes, interject.
if you think back to the scene where he's taking notes in his journal and he's trying to, I don't know, I guess he's just learning from the masters, right? He's learning from the people that are doing stand-up comedy, but the whole crowd is laughing, and when the whole crowd is laughing, he's not laughing, and then he's laughing when the whole crowd is not laughing. So that was a really cool way that the film used to show you that he his perceptions are fully opposite from any normal person.
That's actually pretty neat. I didn't catch that when I went through the first time. So that's actually a good point. Um, and so yeah, he's really kind of, doing things on his own as far as what he finds funny. But we live in like a society where people want to take away what I would refer to as moral absolutes. I guess as a society we've had like defined for a long time, at least Western society, like, this is good, this is bad,
Yeah.
this is good, this is bad. And we've had these kind of clearly set rules, and maybe it started with the sexual revolution or whatever you want to call it, but we've kind of strayed from like what we used to believe would be like societal norms.
Right.
But I guess like, and this is why I say it's nihilism taken to its next logical conclusion, because at some point we can't say, well, they can do whatever they want. We can't really say what's good or bad, or this person should be able to act any way they want to morally. What you say is morally good might not be morally good for that person. So, but where does that lead us as a society if we don't have some ground rule of, hey, this is bad, you cannot do this?
Yeah.
Because the Joker's point was, basically, hey, if it's funny to me, then who cares if it's not funny to you? I should be able to do it.
Yeah.
And so everything kind of takes on this like comedy role of what is right and what is wrong. But it was really scary to hear him say, "I don't believe in anything," and it worries me to see our society kind of
Yeah.
lose, I guess, a moral foundation, or at least what we agree on. And so we're in this time where we've really got to decide, what I guess a foundation for everybody.
Let me tell you what scared me the most. Since you're talking about what struck you the most about the Joker and how he acted and the things that he said. For me, what scared me the most is kind of symbolized with the very, very, very first shot of the movie, which is, I don't know if you remember, he's sticking his fingers in the sides of
Yeah,
his
in his mouth.
mouth, and he's doing his makeup, right? And then I don't know if you remember, but there's like a tear coming out of his eye. And
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
and then when they go a little bit further in the movie, he says a few things like, uh I just don't want to feel this way anymore, or he says something along the lines of, I just don't want to hurt anymore, after he's
Yeah.
asking for more medication. And I think if you watch him throughout the film, he's doing things to try and feel something, and he's doing things to try and connect with people. And I think what
Mm.
scares me uh, the most about how he's acting is that he feels nothing. And that also plays into the morality of it too, because if you feel nothing, then you have no moral compass, right? And so if you whether you
Yeah.
do good or whether you do bad, is you feel nothing. And I think to me, and I want to know what you think is like the biggest tragedy of the film, but for me, the deepest, darkest tragedy of this film is the fact that I really feel like he genuinely loved making children happy. And you see it in the scene in the hospital when he's dancing
Yeah,
and
you can.
interacting with the kids. And you see it in that scene with little Bruce Wayne,
And
where,
you also see it when he's on the bus.
yeah, and then the mom's all getting all angry at him. But and those were the moments in the film where I felt like he actually was grasping towards feeling something. And so
But
the tragedy is that
yeah.
was taken away from him because of his mental illness with the mom on the bus, and because his friend betrayed him at work with by giving him the gun, and he lost his job. And by Alfred showing up, like fat, angry, stupid Alfred, he shows up,
Yeah.
and like he's performing and he's having a great time for Bruce, and that's taken away from him. So I think that, talking about what scares you the most or what warns you the most about what might be going on in society is that people might be feeling nothing.
So that's actually an excellent point that you bring up with the kids. Because that does seem to be the only part of the film that made him happy. But there's always this, at least in our society, we always perceive like this innocence with children. They tend to be less judging, more forgiveful.
Yeah,
They forget harms quicker,
I was like that,
and
I
so
guess.
yeah. But you know, and maybe he can tell the difference of like a child's innocence that laughs actually not at him but with him for the first time.
Yeah.
And so he actually is able to perform at the children's hospital. And so to me, that's a really interesting point. But when you ask like what the most tragic part of the film is, um, man, I don't know if I can pinpoint a single thing. Like, I guess if I could sum it up, it would probably be like the way society failed him, like every step of the way. Um, Whether that was his family that failed him first, for being abusive to him as a small boy,
Yeah.
whether it was his job that eventually failed him for being like misunderstanding of, I mean, yeah, he got caught with a gun or whatever, but he lived in a terrible part of town and was always getting beat up,
Yeah.
you know? Um, Maybe he thought it would be good for defense, and that's a completely different argument. But then the other thing that failed him was even his local government. They shut down his ability to receive medications when he had to stop seeing the therapist because of the budget cuts
Yeah.
and all that. And so literally like every step of the way he was failed by something.
Yeah.
And there's another interesting aspect of the movie I thought too as far as being failed. Um so his work, his family, his therapist, the government, everything failed him. But there was one thing that was never mentioned in the film at all.
Kind of
And that
implied.
was well, for what I'm going for is like it was religion. So everything failed him. But if you notice in his home, there were religious images and symbols in his home, but it
Yeah.
was always in the background. It was never in the forefront. And so everything failed him along the way. And I don't know if that was intended by the director or anything like that, but all the religious symbols were always in the background.
Yeah.
And maybe that was one thing that could have saved him, where he could have found a community that could have embraced him and brought him in. Um, but that was the one thing I thought was interesting, that those images are always in the background, but it was never mentioned in the forefront
Yeah.
of the film.
I mean, it even so I you've got this I mean, there's so many questions on what was real and what was not as well. Uh
Yeah.
ca-
So just for some background on that, I guess clarification. So you're referring to like how he imagined much of the film, and then it actually turned out like some of the things that we thought were real, like his girlfriend, were not.
right.
Like that's what you're going for.
Yeah. Yeah, and some things were obvious. Like I think I felt right away pretty naturally that, especially in the beginning when he starts watching that Murray. with his mom, and
Yeah,
it
you could
it
tell.
just
Yeah.
cuts to himself in the audience, like having this really weird conversation
Yeah.
with the night show host. Um, it felt really fake and contrived, but that kind of gives you a little scary look into his mind as to what his ideal reality is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Oh, so I was just thinking too while you were talking. Like earlier, you asked the question, like, what was like one of the most tragic things? And I'm still thinking about it. But I think honestly, one of the most tragic things that I experienced in the movie was not what happened in the movie, but what actually happened in my movie theater. Um, like there were scenes in the movie that like cut me to my core. Like this
oh,
is
and people
purely
were
evil what
laughing,
he's
right?
doing, and people were laughing,
Dude, same thing in
and
my
like
theater. Same exact
it
experience. That's crazy.
I like I it really bugged me. Like I get it, it's a film and it's not real, but at the same time, like I mean this in the best way possible, but this was like watching how somebody writes a manifesto for some terrible act. Like this like it felt like I was watching somebody's life who would finally get to that point where you would see this person's name on the news.
Yeah.
For something. And so, like, and to see people in the theater, I guess they took it more theatrical than I did because I took the film pretty seriously, which I actually kind of think the director intended, to be honest with you. Um, and so seeing the laughs, it it kind of bugged me. I'm not gonna lie.
So
It kind of left me
there
feeling.
was a couple of genuinely funny parts, like the part, and I wonder if that was planned or not, but after he's talking to the two inspectors, detectives with Gotham Police,
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
walks
walked
into
into
the
the door.
exit door, like that
Yeah,
was, I mean, no one saw that coming.
yeah, that
Like,
was funny. So there were some genuinely funny scenes, but even that one, like, it's funny at his expense, and so
yeah.
but yeah, there were some genuinely funny, comedic stuff, but like some of it was not. It's not comedy for sure.
So
But it definitely got some laughs out.
let me ask you this. Um, what would you say? So I heard a few times the criticism that the film was marketed as a comic book movie, but when people showed up, they did not get a comic book movie. So I was talking to somebody else
Mm.
about it at work, and he's like, he literally said it had nothing to do with the Joker, and I'm like, what are you talking about? The movie's called The
Well,
Joker, and he's like, well,
I
I
mean,
expected a comic book character. I expected a comic book movie. So what would you say to that criticism that this is not a comic book movie?
so there's a couple things I would have to say. One, I totally think the marketing was on point for what this film was going to give us. First of all, the rating should have been a hint.
Right.
Um, as to what type of film you were getting. This was not your run of the mill Marvel movie,
Well,
for all
there
ages,
is
I
Deadpool.
guess.
Deadpool's a
I mean,
comic book
yeah, there was
movie.
that.
I don't know, just playing
Yeah,
devil's
and
advocate.
he's a yeah, no, yeah, you're right, and he's a little anti-hero. Um, but maybe this is just like the comic book fan in me, but I knew that this film was loosely based off of The Killing Joke, um, and which is kind of a more mature version of the Joker that kind of gets into more of, I guess, the mental state of who he is, and so it's a little darker, and so I kind of knew that going in, but between all the drama of like news outlets saying how this movie was going to inspire lonely people to act out and how this was going to be like an influential character for them, I really don't know how you go into the film not knowing, um, I guess, the tone of the film.
Yeah.
But to me, it was definitely a comic book movie because it was loosely based off of one. Um, but that's just background knowledge that I had, and I don't expect many people to have that going into it. But no, I don't find that criticism justified.
So for me, it kind of feels like it represents something, and it's so ironic because all the DC movies that I've seen this year have sucked. I've genuinely not
Yeah,
I've genuinely not enjoyed uh like Aquaman
no,
or
I me
Shazam
either.
or anything like that. And this is, I know people are saying this is not technically a DC movie, but it is.
No, but
Um
the director did want this to be a new start for DC,
yeah, and
away from like the flashy, and all that.
so in all of our talks about Endgame, the scenes that I loved the most and the things that attached to me the most and were the most meaningful to me were the scenes that focused on the people and the relationships between people. And I talked a little bit
Yeah.
about, how Ant-Man was looking through the window at his daughter after not seeing her for, y you know, I guess for him it was 2 hours, but he couldn't believe that, she had grown up into a teenager, things like that.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get into Endgame, but I'm saying that I think this film is a good signal as to where comic book they're not going anywhere. They're gonna keep making them. Obviously, people are buying them and are attracted to them, but I think this is a good signal as to where comic book movies should kind of evolve towards. Like, you can have all the fighting, all of the glowy power stones, all of the big purple angry men, eh, but people are going to need something that they can relate to
And I
emotionally, you know?
yeah, I think that's actually what comic books do well. Like um it takes human nature, and it kind of puts it on like this full display of you know, incredible power and skill and all these different things. But at the same time, there's like this human nature aspect to it where, they're still facing like these same problems that we deal with. And there's still life lessons and things that you can learn and take from them. And there's definitely something relatable in this movie in particular, The Joker, that really touches you at like the human level, even though you know that it's based in this universe of like supernatural things. This film felt human,
So
and
so
it resonated.
what do you feel like for you? Because again, I introduced the movie, before we start talking about it as this checks the box on everything for him. Like, if you think about someone that is mentally not stable or that's having issues or that's, someone, that just has those kinds of problems, it checks the box, every single box. Like, you can
Mhm.
say medicine, you could say, like, lack of family,
Yeah.
lack of father figure. Um, what do you think most people can sympathize with as far as Arthur Fleck?
Ugh. Um,
I mean, what do you
I'm
think?
gonna go ahead and just say, because I thought about this, I'm just gonna go ahead and say like just the way society treated him. Like you see the like in the beginning of the movie where he gets beat up and his sign gets stolen, and then he goes back to his boss, and his boss is like, "What happened to the sign? We're going to take that out of your paycheck." And he's like, "Well, the sign was stolen."
Why would I
And then he
keep the
goes, he's like,
sign?
"Yeah," he's
What would I
yeah.
do with it?
And then yeah, but it's funny because the boss goes from no one would want to steal that sign to why did you steal that sign? Well, if no one would want to steal it, then why would he want to steal it?
Hmm.
And so, um, I think that that piece, definitely where people could feel more connected is like because for the first like little bit of the movie, you felt bad for him. Like there was no reason not to be on his side. You
Absolutely.
know,
Yeah,
um, even
everybody's
up
been
until
in that situation, I think.
yeah, and even up until like honestly, when he was on that subway getting beat up and he used the gun in self defense for the first two victims,
Hmm.
like it was hard to watch because that's like a horrific thing.
Yeah,
But he was protecting himself. But
but the
then there
third
was
one,
the third
no.
victim.
Oh no.
The
It
third
was
one ran and he chased him down and he killed him in cold blood and you're just like dude, that's when it changed. Like that's when it went from like
I
I
sympathize with
really
this
feel bad
person. Yeah,
for this guy to
I'm done.
like
I'm
yeah.
afraid of him.
Yeah, so it's but then I don't know, at the same time you still kind of feel like not that it's justified, but like, man, you like this guy has been pushed and pushed into this corner, and how much longer can somebody with his mental capacity be able to contain himself? Um, ah, it's a difficult film to
Yeah,
digest,
I think for a lot
to
of
be
people,
honest.
and I think too, the film was made in such a way because I mean, we're talking about sympathizing with the character, we're talking about connecting with the movie, but it was directed and scripted and filmed, I think, in such a way that you can project whatever you want to think on it,
Yeah.
and
But, you know,
you could have an argument to support it based on what they showed you.
I think that's a valid point,
It's
and
like a
I
blank
think
canvas.
as like a I don't like to keep using, like, the blanket term, like, as a society, but, you know, like, in our culture, I don't wanna say we're having a fondness with serial killers, but just look at, like, the recent documentaries and films that have come out lately that have been hugely popular, like the Ted Bundy stuff. Like, Netflix has, like, serial killer,
Yeah.
documentaries on all the time that get, like, rave reviews,
Podcasts, like, the number one
and
podcast is, like, crime
yes,
podcasts.
crime podcasts,
Crime,
like
murder,
true
mystery.
crime. Those are, like, insanely popular, and I don't know, there's gotta be something that, like, society is looking for as far as in, like, not necessarily sympathizing, but
For
understanding,
sure.
like, how people get to the point that they get. Like, even in, like, early, like, criminal like, science, I guess you would call it, when people wanted to start analyzing and actually talking to these, like, serial killers,
Yeah.
there was huge pushback by society, like, "Why would you try and understand these people? They're monsters, they just need to be taken out of society." And then the other half is like, "No, but if we understand them, then maybe we can help them before they become these monsters." But I feel like we're, like, leaning more towards that now, like, we want to understand
Yeah.
how people get to where they get, and how they end up making these, like, horrible decisions in their lives.
Okay.
And Joker is definitely part of that culture, I feel like, of, like, what we want to see, like, all these Netflix documentaries and everything else that are coming out.
So check it out. So, for me, again, like I said, you can project so many of your own opinions onto the film because of how it was made, and you can derive so many lessons. Like, again, you can make assumptions about therapy, or you can make assumptions about too many drugs, or you can make assumptions about like crime and chaos and lack of government support, whatever. But the one thing that I think everyone should and can take away from the film is watch how you treat people. Treat people
Yeah,
like
I
you can.
heard a lot of people say
And
that.
I think the number one quote from the movie that I think illustrates that point is the part where he's in the bathroom and he's doing something very loving, very caring. He's helping, he's either keeping his mom company while she's taking a bath, or he's helping her take a bath. But either way, that, I mean, that shows that he's kind of serving her and loving her. And he's talking about his aspirations and his goals of being a comedian. And everyone kinda laughed at this part, but she's like, "Don't you have to be
Mhm.
funny to be a stand-up comedian?" Something like along those lines. And it's like, like, everyone laughed, and I laughed at that part, but when you go back and think about it, it's like, holy crap, that is definitely how you cut someone down. That is definitely how you prevent someone from achieving their goals or being who they wanna be, or it's, I mean, if I were to tell you, "Josh, I think I wanna be a firefighter," it's just an example, and you are like, "Well, aren't you af
I don't think you
aren't
can
you
do that,
afraid
man.
aren't you afraid of fire?" Like, I don't know, I just, that's just something I pulled out, but, I mean, that is a lesson that I think you should take away from the movie, and he touches on a little bit when he's talking to Maria in the end, but
Yeah.
it's like, watch how you treat people. Like, are you someone that builds people up, or are you someone that breaks them down? And I think that's
Well,
something
so
everybody can kind of learn or glean from the film.
and when you talked earlier about, like, all the different things that failed him, I mean, like, we can't control the government budgets. You know, I can't control what his job does. I can't control what his family did to him in the past, but the only thing at the end of the day that I can control is the way that I do treat people.
Yep.
And so I think that was pretty impactful to a lot of people. I heard it from people that saw the film. That one of the biggest things they were like or saying was, "Well, I definitely want to be better to people," and that's good. Like, I'm glad people took that away as like a message from the movie.
But don't do it out of fear,
Because
though.
in
Like,
the end
do
of the
it
day,
out of love,
but don't,
I
yeah,
don't want to
like
be too
that's
preachy
a
on
good
this
point.
podcast, but I really think, I mean, you should digest these messages and really think about what you can use from it. So,
Yeah, well, no, yeah, and you make a valid point. Because I guess yeah, the motivation is important because you don't want to do things that are poorly motivated, like out of fear or whatnot. But like, we should really care for like the people who just can't take care of themselves in society. Like you saw him in this movie, he was like, I don't want to say fine, but like, I mean, as soon as they took the medicine away, it's like when things started really crumbling.
That was definitely one of the
Um,
first things. Took away his medicine, and then they took away this counseling, and then his
yeah,
mom was basically taken away from him because of the health problem, but his support systems all around him, whatever he did have, just shut down.
yeah,
His job was gone,
and
his mom was gone.
everything at the same time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like a perfect storm. And that's what really drove him to become, who he became. And then he started enjoying getting revenge on the people that were bad to him. Because if you notice, like he didn't just go out and kill indiscriminately, really.
Yeah.
Like even
That's
this coworker that he locked in his house and killed, like he let his other coworker live because like I was always nice to him.
Oh, dude, man,
Like he,
tell you what freaked me
but that
out.
scene scared me.
I thought he was gonna it's funny 'cause
I didn't think he was gonna
you
make it,
you
man. When he couldn't
remember
open the door.
yeah, so, like, you remember when he was, like, cleaning out his locker and leaving work? And I thought he was gonna, like, possibly hurt people at work when he was cleaning his locker out on the way. And then he like delivers the one joke that was an actual joke in the whole movie, which whoops, I forgot to punch out. And then he punches the crap. Like that was an actual joke. Like that was a pun that he used properly. Whereas I don't think anything else that any joke or any stand up that he tried to do in the movie was an actual joke. But I thought he was gonna hurt
Yeah,
everybody.
it's
I thought he
funny.
was gonna hurt him. And they wanted you to think that too, I think. But
Yeah, I think so. And it let it even be more suspenseful when he finally locked those two coworkers in his house because you were
oof.
like, what is
I had to
going to
look down. I
happen?
couldn't
And then it
watch.
was it was brutal. It was brutal. And then when his like midget friend could not open the door because he couldn't reach the latch, like my heart was pounding for that guy.
Yeah.
But he didn't do anything to him because he was really only doing everything for revenge. And back to what you said earlier about how it's a blank slate, like you can paint this film in any light you want.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, you could say, man, he was just getting revenge, whether it's right or wrong. Like, those were just the people who had wronged him in his life. He was just getting back at them.
Yeah.
He wasn't, like, going out in the streets and doing all this stuff. Um, but, what he did, though, what was scary was, like, even without trying, he started a movement, all throughout the city of, rising up against those who, like, they felt oppressed
Yeah.
um,
And
because
honestly,
of, I guess.
my honest opinion
Go ahead.
about that specifically, uh, about the whole oppression of the rich, I really don't think he cared about that. I think
No,
that
I
it
didn't
was
get that
personal
impression
for
from
him,
him.
and I think the way I interpreted it was there was already a lot of chaos and strife going on anyways at the time, and all the people in the city just kind of needed to put a face on it. And so that's what they did, but for him, I think if it were 3 poor guys in the subway doing the same thing to him, he would have reacted in the same way.
He would have done the same thing. And so, but the thing is, when the news took a hold of it, and this is kind of the interesting point too, is how much the news, without wanting to, actually influenced the city because so the Joker goes in, he kills these three rich guys on the subway, right? And then they all work for like Wayne Enterprise
Yeah.
or whatever. And so they interview Wayne on television about, everything. Like, how do you feel about these recent tragedies? And so he being like the tough guy, he's like, we're going to get after these jokers or whatever. And so he used the term joker as just like a demeaning term. But everybody that was against him took it on like as like this point of pride.
An
And it actually
identity.
reminded me of like honestly like the American 2016 election, how there was like all these names being called back and forth between different parties and stuff. And then like, for example, like some people were called deplorables, but then those people that were like being targeted, like they took that upon themselves as like this point of pride, like because they really, really disliked the other side.
Yeah.
Um, when the other side was saying something negative to them, they took it as like this point of pride, and that went on both sides of the aisle. And so it's kind of interesting that like if the person's saying something negative to you, like you view them in a bad light, you could take that as like this personal victory that you've gotten under their skin.
Yeah.
And so now you wear that name. So what they used to,
No, I get you now. Yeah. It's
what
like
they
yep.
tried to use to put you down, you accept it, and then it doesn't mean anything anymore. And so that's how the Jokers all throughout the city kind of rose up, and they put on their masks.
Yeah.
And so it was really, really interesting
So
because
sorry, go ahead.
I mean, sorry, before I forget this thought, and I can't remember who said it in the film, and I'm pretty sure it was said, but they were talking about how everybody was hiding behind all these Joker masks. And it's kind of interesting that Bruce Wayne is going to grow up and he's going to hide behind a mask.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, geez.
you know, his entire life. And so it's just kind of interesting to see like that dynamic between the good and the bad. Like everybody wears a mask in society or in life. You know, there's all things that we
100%.
do that we're not proud of. And so we kind of wear a mask a little bit, but it all depends on like what we're trying to do, like what we're trying to accomplish in our lives. Like these people put on a mask so their identity would be, so they wouldn't be known and they could go out and create chaos.
Yeah.
While the Batman or Bruce Wayne grows up and he puts on a mask so that he can maintain order.
Yeah.
And so we all do that, but it just depends on what we're trying to go at with it. Sorry, I had to interrupt you before I forgot that.
So I just talking about the politics of Thomas Wayne and Bruce. Do you think? I think this is a popular question that I've gotten a lot of different answers on. Do you think that there was a relationship between Penny Fleck and Thomas Wayne?
No.
Why?
Um.
Because I disagree. Well, do you want me to tell you why I disagree?
Perfect then. Yeah, you can say it.
It's super little, but do you remember?
Are you talking about the photograph?
Yeah, the photograph.
Yeah, I knew. So that's like the big thing people are saying.
It's such a beautiful. Like, who do you get? Do you give a woman a photograph saying how beautiful her smile is, if you don't have some kind of intimate relationship with her?
So,
or if you don't have feelings for her?
That is true. So there's two things or ways that I view that. One, he never wrote her that. Because at the end of it, all it does is like have his initials, right? It just says TW at the bottom. It doesn't actually spell out his name. And so one, she could have written that note, like I don't know, or anybody for that matter, because she is crazy.
That's true.
Or at least the film kind of portrays her as crazy. That was my first thought. Well, who actually wrote that? And then the second one is, I don't really know who Thomas Wayne was before he became a family man. Maybe he was a flirtatious guy and had a lot of people work with him, and that was just or how he interacted with the women that worked there.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of him being nice or flirtatious or whatever, and it didn't really mean anything. But because she is unstable, she took that as like this ultimate meaning that something happened. And just how Arthur Fleck, the Joker, like contrives these narratives in his head that he has a girlfriend and all this different stuff, and when he really doesn't, I kind of feel like she may have done the same thing where she thought that she had a relationship with him and she never did.
Yeah.
And so that was my taking. But I completely understand people who do think that it was real.
I feel like my entire life I assumed that Thomas Wayne was like a benevolent, loving father. But now that
he's generally portrayed like that, yeah.
Well, and now that you go back and look, and I'm thinking back to different cutscenes from like Batman and Robin, or maybe even Batman Forever, but that was like, even when Bruce Wayne's parents were alive, I kind of feel like he was on his own. You know?
Who's that, Bruce?
Yeah. Because I
mean, they always make it seem like Alfred was like the parent figure,
Yeah, like he was neglected. So I don't know. I'm just kind of coming to some realization to this right now. But he was also portrayed as kind of a tyrant. He made a comment like, he said, these people need us to take care of them, and that was his main argument for office.
They can't do it themselves,
right? And so, I mean, think about whatever your politics are, think about that in whatever way you want to. But man, I think I find that terrifying. If someone
you're telling a group of people that they can't make it without you, can either it could either go one or two ways. But like the way it ended in this film was like heck no, we can do it ourselves. We'll just take you down.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of scary, you know.
We're kind of running out of time, but um technically, how did you enjoy the film? Like music,
Technically, I
direction.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed being able to watch a comic book movie. So actually, the biggest thing I liked about it was my biggest complaint as well. So I
Ooh.
enjoyed being able to watch a comic book film that took on the human struggle and really explored it at like the mental level where we all got to see the internals of somebody and how they reacted to different things happening in their life. But then on the flip side of that, I felt like the Joker was so human that I don't foresee this Joker that we saw in the film being capable enough of being like the foe of Batman.
Correct.
Like there's no way this guy is going to be the guy who takes on Batman and can beat him up
Yeah.
and can, you know, kind of play at that level and orchestrate all this crime.
Yeah.
Maybe he's not the real Joker. Maybe one of the people he inspired in the street grows up to be the real Joker. But as
That's
far
the
as
theory
this
that I
character,
subscribe to.
I do too, because I don't, like I said, I loved it that they put him on the human level, but for a comic book thing, it was so much on the human level that I don't see this guy ever becoming like a threat to Batman.
Yeah.
And so that was the one thing I really, really liked, and the one thing on a technical level that I didn't like either.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and it's funny, I think if you go online now, I saw a blog a couple days ago. There was a bunch of pictures. You know, the stairs for me were very symbolic. I already mentioned this to you once, but if you ever notice in the film where he's sad and lonely and depressed, he's just slowly walking up those stairs, and that's a flight of stairs that's outside somewhere in the Bronx.
Mm.
But if whenever he's like on a roll or when he's feeling good, he's going downstairs, and that's at his workplace, and that's at that same flight of stairs outside there. And
Things are easy.
if you go and just search online, you've got a lot of people dressing like Joker, going on the stairs and taking pictures, and there's some really cool pictures out
Mm.
there. So maybe I'll try and link to that or share that out on Twitter. But hey, that's a good segue. Do you wanna plug our Twitter again, Facebook?
Yeah, so it's really easy to find us on social media. So it's at Club XP on Twitter, and the same thing for Facebook. So just look us up there if you're interested. We'll post something about this. If you want to continue the conversation, definitely just add to the comments of the post that we add on there.
Yeah, and if you
But you
disagree,
can just
let
do
us know too.
Seriously, yeah. So it's simple. Just do a little Google search, and then you'll be able to find us. But yeah, that's Twitter. The handle is at Club XP Podcast. I didn't say that on the first one, so it's Club XP Podcast, and it's the same thing for our Facebook page as well. It's facebook.com/Club XP Podcast. So be sure to continue the conversation there when this is posted. Let us know what you thought, whether you completely disagree, whether you did agree. But Evan, that's all I got for this one. Do you got anything else you want to add?
I think we did
any last minute
I
thoughts?
think we did a good job at leveling up the conversation. I'm pretty dang proud of that.
I do too.
Like,
Yeah, I honestly, dude, I could keep talking about this for a long time. Like, it was a superb film. I'm giving it a high rating, like 8, almost 9.
yeah.
Out of 10, to be honest, on my level.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the violence was a little bit hard, but I loved the score. I loved like the constant like string quartet. I we didn't say anything about the actor. I don't. I always. I'm afraid to say his name. Is it Joaquin Phoenix or Joaquin? I don't know, man. But I think he nailed it, man. I love him in so
Yeah,
many
he
different
did.
movies. And I know he maybe as a person he's a little bit weird, but he's an artist, so whatever. I give him
He did a good job.
10. I give him a 10 out of 10 for this. Like uh I really he's talking about doing a sequel. Who knows if he does it? I kind of hope he doesn't, because I kind of feel like the film stands on its own. But if they do, cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyways, but hey guys, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
See ya.